Broads Media.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome on in to Sports Talk with Broads. Long preseason game. That thing took forever. Here's what we take away from it. A lot of injuries, man. A ton of them. And some of them were really hard to watch. Tyree Cleveland laying on the field for as long as he did was scary. I'm praying for him. We got the update that he was moving his body. That's great news. Ojomo, very similar. He had to get a similar treatment to get off the field. It was definitely nerve-wracking for sure. A lot of guys were getting hurt. Nolan Smith and that shoulder, man, that dude's a baller. That kid is no joke. The way that he dips when he's getting around his offensive lineman, he's a stud, okay? The fact that him and Jalen Carter both just fell for the Eagles is truthfully amazing. I cannot process it, but that kid is so lethal. You wait, and you get him in a rotation that already has Josh Sweat, Brandon Graham, and Hassan Reddick. You can't even think about a better opportunity for him to succeed around the National Football League. We're going to love him. I'm telling you. Now, speaking of Hassan Reddick, he's having thumb surgery. I'm not too worried, only because it does sound as if the Eagles organization is very positive that he will be back in action for Week 1. And I did spend some time with the Jason Kelce injury last year, feeling worried about him and his status. And they were like, yo, relax, everything will be okay. And it was. Last year was so massive for me because it was all about, I'm seeing what they're saying. I'm not believing until it's proven. And all they did was prove to me in many different areas of this team. So I know each injury is different. And because Jason Kelce did X, Y, and Z, it doesn't automatically reflect on how Hassan Reddick is going to recover from anything. At the same time, they did their offseason and their preseason and their training camp a certain way with a certain goal in mind. And it panned out really well last year. I'm sort of in they deserve my faith mode, which is scary. Seriously, I'm not telling everybody to do it. I'm not saying it's easy to do it. I'm just letting you know how I feel, which makes it difficult in this job because more times than not, you need to react to everything, and you need to start picking apart all sorts of information and all sorts of press conferences and everything they don't do. You want to feel strongly about either what they're not doing or what they are doing or all of it. Right now, they have my faith, and it really stems from Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni. To be honest with you, those two I'm loving, and I think that they put you in a great position. Even looking at what happened with the practice schedule this week with the joint practices with Cleveland. Okay, so day one was a stinker. They came out flat as hell. Why? I don't know. You would think you finally see a different opponent. You see someone else lined up from you other than your teammates. It's a different color uniform. Go kill them, right? I'm just saying, you think you take the field for that day, and there's already inspiration because of everything I just laid out. And they no-showed. But day two, Nick said something that resonated with them instantly. With the snap of their fingers, they completely dominated. So why did it look so awful early? I don't know. I don't have the answer for you, but I don't look at that as a negative. If anything, you're getting that out of the way. Here's your friendly reminder. If you think you're going to walk over any team on a Sunday, if it's Sunday 1 o'clock and it's someone who stinks, and you think, hey, we'll just snap the ball and be fine. No, you won't. You have to come prepared. You have to play the right way. You need to be dialed in and do the little things right. The details need to be absolutely crushed, or you will get stomped. And if you get that out of the way early in a training camp session, maybe that plays a role into something we see later on in the year. maybe a loss would have occurred, but Nick all week long goes, remember what happened against the Browns? Remember what happened when you all thought that it would be easy and that you're going to beat up your matchup and you're going to annihilate the opposition? You got kicked down hard. It felt heavy. It was a terrible feeling. Show up each day this week, ready for Sunday, even if they suck. We have to get this W. I think that could play a role in a message later on in week 5, week 6, week 7, something along those lines. It happens. You're human. Sometimes you have a bad practice. Even some of the throws that Jalen Hurts made in day one, some of the beat reporters that were at the practice were saying, I don't even know if that would legitimately count in a game because he might have been sacked by then. My biggest takeaway from those practices was Sidney Brown is no joke, and you're going to know when he's on the field. He's starting fights. Same with Derek Barnett, whether it's his own team or another team. I don't know what to make of the Derek Barnett situation. I was on Birds 365 on Jacob Media with John McMullen and Jody Mack, and they were asking me before the second preseason game, what would you take out of seeing Derek Barnett out on the field? And what would you take away if he wasn't on the field? And it's nothing that I really process, so I'm like, I mean, if he doesn't play, that tells me that, well, Howie Roseman and Derek Barnett are still tied at the hip because I can't believe he's still here to begin with. Okay, it's like Derek Barnett, he's always here, and that was a first-round pick for him, so maybe there's something to that. If he does play, well, he's at the back end of a super stacked rotation with your defensive edge rushers, and that's sort of where I left it. And they threw back at me, what if they're putting him on tape so other teams might decide to call? Maybe it's a trade package thing. This is what Derek Barnett can do after the injury. He still has something in the tank. He brings some fire. If it's a team lacking that in your face, I'm in your grill type of dude, he's someone who could bring that. And I guess he definitely crosses the line too much, and I think there's plenty of tape and there's plenty of examples of him doing that throughout his career. I guess the injury factor, though, and returning from something so gruesome is maybe what would hold a team back at this rate. And if he gets some time, maybe that's something that some GMs are looking at. I don't know. I think they just want to keep this thing churning and have so many bodies that it's nonstop. We're going to crush you. We're coming in waves. Part of the reason why you're able to get 70 sacks last year is because of how fresh and how dominant everyone can be. They like Derek Barnett. It just is what it is. They like him. He's still here. Every single damn year, he is still here. So it's just something that they put a lot of stock into, those defensive big men up top or up front, and I don't blame them for that. I think it's definitely a recipe for success. But, that's sort of the whole practice side of things and what happened there. As I'm taking a look at my notes, Josh Sweat dominated. Jalen Hurts on day 2, he's directing A.J. Brown perfectly in the end zone. Bang, puts it on the money. A nice touch pass to Devontae as well. Some weirdness out of Sean Desai. Bradbury getting moved around. Nolan Smith with some interesting usage. I don't know what the case is there. I do remember that under Jonathan Gannon, if we're going to keep it on the same playing field, remember when Jonathan Gannon would drop some guys back into coverage and we lost our minds, or Fletcher Cox was open about the way he was being utilized with the technique, the 4-eye, this and that, and it's like, hey, I want to be played and used a certain way. Well, if Jonathan Gannon, I'm just saying, like, if we're being honest, if Jonathan Gannon was to use James Bradbury weirdly or use Nolan Smith weirdly, we probably be like, that's strange. Put the guys in their favorite positions. Put the guys in their comfort zone so that they can just go out and ball. I don't know what Sean Desai is going to do. I'm fascinated to have anybody but Jonathan Gannon. I'm just telling you how I truthfully feel. If the same things were done and it wasn't Desai and it was Gannon, I'd scratch my head a little bit. I don't know what this means. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe this is just It's training camp, it's practices, let's get weird, none of this matters anyway. James Bradbury's going to be playing opposite of Darius Slay. We're not going to get too ridiculous with this stuff when it's the normal season. Only time will tell, and I guess I'll react accordingly based off of some of the decisions made by Sean Desai. I can't imagine, though, that you start getting to the level of some of the things that we saw, but maybe I'm completely wrong, and that's part of what Sean Desai is going to do. I'd be shocked, but maybe it is. Yeah, that's sort of it. Oh, and Reed Blankenship's no joke. Reed Blankenship with multiple different interceptions, and if the ball's getting deflected by Cunningham, what's this team stress the most? You have to limit explosive plays or have a ton of explosive plays and then force turnovers. And if Cunningham is deflecting the ball and it's going up in the air and it's giving someone like Reed Blankenship a chance to get the football and then put the offense in a good position or just turn the ball over in general if it's in the end zone and you get a massive stop, it's phenomenal. And I think Cunningham has made some noise, and so has Nakobe Dean. So now transitioning back to that second preseason game, thank you for us finally getting a chance to watch Nakobe Dean play the sport. He did have the penalty when the quarterback was sliding down. It did look like he hit him in the head a little bit, but he did force a 4th and short by making a tackle right by the sticks, and then he forced a fumble. So Nakobe Dean's out there making some plays and making an impact instantly. Good for him. We needed to see that. And I like the fact that he responds to some adversity. Here's a flag. It was high. It was high. In any regular season game, that's going to be a penalty, regardless if you think the quarterback slid late and it was a really super late decision to go down on his ass. And it was. I think that he slid, realizing, oh, crap, I'm probably going to get hit here. And it was late throughout his thought process. But Nakobe Dean is going to get called for that in this era. Okay, well, here's the turnover. Okay, here's a way for me to help out my squad. Let's knock that sucker out of the hands, and boom. And speaking of adversity, Sermon did something very similar. He fumbles. Now there's a clip of him on the sideline, not feeling sorry for himself, but you could tell how pissed off he was. That is a very competitive group right now, with Penny, with Gainwell, with a lot of different guys, with Swift. There is not a lot of room to mess up, and he fumbles the football. Here's Jalen Hurts getting into his ear, showing him some encouragement, making him realize that there's a long game to go. There's plenty of touches that are going to happen. Let's go make a play. And then he gets a nice touchdown and runs it in there. Sensational bounce back for him. Once again, it's more just about how Jalen Hurts handles himself, how Jalen Hurts has that it factor, and when he's talking to you, there's something special about it. The way he leads blows me away, and we saw an example of that to someone who is on the bubble. You saw a guy who might get cut, might not make it. Who is he? Where is he? There's something special about Jalen Hurts, and Sermon keeps his head in the game, and he makes an impact play. And I just love seeing that, and that's the beauty of our quarterback and what he brings to the table. Some other notes. Zech McPherson, man, he was getting – Zech, I say Zech because that's the way it's spelled. He ended up getting injured. He was getting picked on. He's not an outside corner. I don't think that's a good spot for him. They were basically looking in his direction every single time. They barely went the other way. It was nonstop. I'm staring that side down, and I'm going to throw the ball. Now, there was actually one play that great coverage. The ball went up in the air, and one of your big men should have made the interception. I think it was Street. He saw the ball. You could see his eyes light up, and as he went to the ground to try and make the catch, he just flat out missed it. He'll probably never get another opportunity like that in his life. So he failed, and McPherson did cause that great chance to turn the ball over, and his teammate unfortunately failed him there. But ultimately, there were a ton of examples of him getting shelled and annihilated. A couple breakups here and there, a couple nice coverages here and there, but not enough to outweigh the flaws of him playing outside corner. I thought it was an absolute disaster. Zacchaeus gets injured too. So just a lot of bodies going down. That wasn't the case last year. We loved how healthy they were. A lot of guys. And the way Nolan Smith was walking off the field and jogging around the sidelines with his shoulder dipped down, and not the good dip, not when he's on one-on-one coverage and he can see the quarterback and he can sense it. He's always around, man. He's literally within a half a second from the quarterback. I swear to God, it seems every single snap. This kid is going to be gross. And I remember getting mocked and destroyed for saying, okay, if Jalen Carter does get plucked from somebody prior to the Eagles drafting, there's nothing wrong with securing Nolan Smith and rocking with him. Oh, but his size. Oh, but this. Oh, that's so underwhelming. No. Nolan Smith is a sick talent. And when you look at the room he's going to be learning from, you wait. Now, the fact they got both is, I'm speechless. Nolan Smith, gross. Haven't stopped thinking about it. But when you saw the shoulder and you saw him leave the field and go back to the locker room, I was holding my breath. The optics of it was miserable. There's no hiding around that at all. I was stunned to see him back on the sideline. I was stunned to hear, I think they labeled some of them as questionable to return. Like some were out indefinitely and others were questionable, even though they wouldn't actually return. That was the label next to the name. Okay, I guess it could be a lot worse. I guess it could be something way more hurtful to the heart. What else is hurtful to the heart, though, is Marcus Mariota. The guy stinks. He does not know how to throw the football. I don't know if he's nervous. I don't know if he's smelling McKee right underneath of his ass. It's game 2 of the preseason, and Nick Sirianni already has to make statements after the game that, oh yeah, Marcus Mariota is our number 2 quarterback. He's our backup quarterback, okay? And it's like, well, as soon as you start having those, then you're closer than you think. That's step 1. All right, there is a journey to somebody replacing someone else on the quarterback list. And when you jump up a certain spot, going from 3 to 2, we're going from 2 to 1. But whenever it starts to creep in, that's the first time the wheels start to move with it, and that's exactly what's happening. You want to talk financial, and you want to talk what they paid to bring Marcus Mariota in here, and Nick had some snappiness towards the media when asked about these two because he said, well, Marcus Mariota did not have a bad first game. You might be saying that. You might be writing that, but I don't feel that way. He used his legs to make a lot of good plays, and he kept the offense rolling, and there was some good movement with the first downs, and it was good for him operating the offense that way. And it's like, okay, Nick, I get it, but you're completely wrong. Marcus Mariota can't throw the football, and that is the number 1 job of a quarterback is to hit his wide receivers. It's funny when you hear Tanner McKee speaking. Yeah, I did actually listen to the post-game press conference because I'm a sicko, okay? And he's like, yeah, what's my job? Because he was asked about reading the field, and he was asked about what's it like to see the game at this level. How comfortable are you? And he said, my job, because with some of my throws, his throws are impressive, man. It's got zip on it. He's willing to trust his arm. If there's tight coverage, I don't care. I'm going to put the ball in space to make my receiver have a chance. And that's basically what he said. It's like, my job is to get the ball to these receivers. They're the good ones. They're the ones that make defenders miss, and they can do a lot more than me. If I get them the football, then we can do some really solid things. And that's the way he throws the rock. While Marcus Mariota in his head is, don't screw up. Don't mess this up. Oh, he's wide open. Where's the footwork? Oh, the ball's sailing so far over everybody's head. It leads to an interception. They're non-competitive. He's not even giving his receivers a chance to make a play on the ball. It is horrible, and McKee is feeling himself with confidence. No lie, I swear to God, if Carson Wentz was in that locker room, Carson Wentz would fold with Tanner McKee right behind him. That's how well he's playing, and I think they got a stud, man. Now, Jalen Hurts is your guy. I'm just saying, for him to be a what's the word? I guess what do they call Clayton Thorson? A project quarterback. For him to be more of a project guy and really less pressure than Mariota, fine. You come in here, we're going to help you out, we're going to work with you and all. For it to be this smooth though, and for it to look this way, good for him. I'm excited. This early in his career, I don't know what it means because Jalen Hurts is your dude. But if you have a nice option at quarterback like that for your backup, it goes a long way, especially the last couple of years. Like it or not, it is real. Jalen Hurts didn't play every single game in the season, so at some point you needed someone else out there. We're way too early for this. I'm acknowledging that. Way too early for this. But I'm just saying, as he progresses, as he gets better, as he learns, is there a time where you need him for 2 games and it doesn't look the same way as that second game for Gardner Minshew? Maybe more along the lines of the first game where they should have beat Dallas. It didn't look great for Gardner Minshew the following week, but can it look better and look more like giving us a chance to win a game if Jalen Hurts is off for a week? I'm not talking anytime soon. I think they're giving Marcus Mariota every single opportunity if anything like this goes down this year. I'm looking more forward to anything that Tanner McKee does with the Eagles organization moving forward and as he grows. Okay, more along those lines. Sills had a couple rough snaps, which led to a safety. Ringo fell asleep mid-rep. The ball dropped right into the breadbasket on the right side of the sideline there. Kellen Mond was escaping 5, 6, 7 guys and some ugly sequences. Eli Ricks, some ugly sequences. And, yeah, that's sort of my takeaways from that Eagles-Browns game, too, and to look at some of those practices that happened throughout the week as well. Let's get to a couple text messages that came in, and this is from Hakeem. Why is Derek Barnett still here? He's a walking flag, and causing fights in practices isn't enough. Is Howie trying to prove anything about when he was drafted? Okay, so with that point, I don't think so. This far out, after someone was drafted, is there anything about proving? Okay, let's say Derek Barnett is last defensive end option. He does that role well, fine, average. There's nothing Derek Barnett can do that would justify it at this rate. At the time, you look at what he did at Tennessee, and you saw his sack numbers, and you saw how explosive he was in college. I don't really blame Howie Roseman for drafting. I really don't. Sometimes you can have a proper thought process, and it just doesn't pan out. With Derek Barnett, at the time before we saw his career pan out, there's nothing wrong with the logic of bringing him in here after he had the college career that he had. It makes a lot of sense with the fit and the idea of how they like to build their roster. It just wasn't as smooth. The transition didn't work out as well, but it's really not like Jalen Reagor. Okay, the Reagor thing, it might be overplayed and it might be over talked about, it might be over dissected over the last couple of years. At the end of the day, there's legitimacy to the Justin Jefferson thing, looking at an LSU receiver going to a TCU guy. There's a lot of reasons why some of it didn't make sense. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. Who else was it? Davion Taylor with that selection, a guy who hasn't really played too much football due to his religion, and it's such a project high up in the draft. There's a lot of examples of that. Derek Barnett doesn't fall in that category. I really don't think it's about justifying the pick anymore. I feel Howie Roseman is over that side of it. He's done so much well since then. I don't think he's still harping on that. It's also another body that's been here. And seriously, they want to just keep letting this thing roll nonstop. So every single snap, there's a wave of someone powerful enough to take you down. And when you have so many bodies, and even if your back end of your defense defensive edge rotation is a Derek Barnett. Take away the penalties. I'm just saying if that's your last defensive end rotation guy or somewhere towards the back end with, once again, Hassan Reddick, Brandon Graham, and Josh Sweat and Nolan Smith, and then Derek Barnett is flirted in there once in a blue moon. It's not a horrific guy to just have there as long as he's not causing any trouble, but he always causes trouble, so who am I kidding? No, to answer your question, I don't think it's about any sort of justification at this rate. I think we're past that side of it. Colin texts in, are you worried about Reddick's thumb injury and how he was openly talked about being unpaid? It's just been a weird training camp for him with everything. I'm not worried about the thumb. I trust in the thumb. The part about the unpaid thing, I never jumped deep into that. I think it was Jeff McClain. I could be wrong, but he was the one that was pushing that question towards him a few weeks back when that got a lot of pub. I'm not and like it was like, oh, what do you do? Do you just pay him? You want to make this team happy. You want to make everybody all secure. If he wants more money, give him more money. That's not how they work here. All right, Howie Roseman is a manipulator of cap space, and he knows how to make the money work and all. It would go against everything I believe in if it's like, hey, all right, just give him a boatload of cash because he had a bunch of sacks last year and he deserves so much more from the market than he's getting right now. It's like, that's not what they do, though. Part of the reason why the Eagles can have sustained success is because they work this thing out beautifully with money and cap space and percentage and this and that. They have this thing mapped out and blueprinted throughout a full-on sheet where this works because of that. Everything falls into place because of where the money is now. That doesn't mean that you can't get creative. That doesn't mean you can't make other things work. It doesn't mean that you have to stay true. Sometimes you have to adjust on the fly. All of that is real, and I think they are very capable of doing that. But I thought it was too premature of a discussion. He wasn't holding out and saying, I'm not going to play for you. I'm not showing up to camp. I'm not performing. I need my money now. It was nothing along those lines. If it did get into that direction, then maybe you would have to look at it and say, all right, well, what can we do and what can we add and how can we get you some extra little how do you do off to the side into your pockets, whatever. But there was none of that going on. I didn't think that was needed. So if you bring up the contract issues there, Colin, I'm not hitting a panic button on either of those, whether it's the thumb injury or the contract stuff with Hassan Reddick until I need to. It doesn't mean it's impossible to get to that point. Maybe one day I do. I'm just not there yet. And then Scotty says, do you really think the Eagles trust Mariota to win them a football game if Jalen Hurts is hurt? Do they trust Mariota? They'll say they trust Mariota. So he'll get it. Do they actually trust him? I'm sure there's some concerns. I'm sure there's some red flags that are real. But they paid him. And he has experience in this league. And McKay is raw. There is a big difference being in. Okay, you're playing for the Philadelphia Eagles. They are in a position to be a number one seed, look for a bye, this and that. Jalen Hurts goes down for a couple weeks with some sort of ankle that they're nursing and making sure he's ready for the postseason. Hey, Tanner McKee, we got a home game against the New York Giants. We got an away game against a division opponent. We're playing the Cowboys. We're doing this. We're doing that. It's a lot different than a preseason game in the second half of a week 2 preseason game. So I love everything McKee has been doing, but we can't act like it's apples to apples. It's a completely different beast, and I don't know if that means Mariota is going to be ready for the challenge at all. I'm just saying, yeah, they're going to give him the ball. I don't know if that means they trust him or not. He's going to get the ball. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's my feeling on it. All right, everyone, that's how I dissected this Eagles-Browns game. I love you all so much for hanging out with me. I'll see you all on the next one.